Welcome friends, it's Gail here. I hope you had a great holiday. With this Heirloom Snowman Ornament, my goal is to solve this question. How can I decoupage a freestanding flat image in the center of a disc ornament? While I will introduce the supplies throughout this demonstration, you can find a list of materials and links in the description. I start with two 4.5-inch ornament halves and a 9x12 sheet of wet media acetate. I use Duralar wet media acetate because it has a protective coating that allows you to paint, decoupage, and draw on it. Duralar makes a variety of transparencies, so make sure it says wet media in the description if you use this method. One plastic sheet is enough to make 4 ornaments. The snowman is on a 5-inch cocktail napkin. I buy individual napkins for less than $1 at decoupagenapkins.com. Trace an ornament half on a 1/4 sheet of acetate. Draw a smaller circle inside, cut it out, and fit it inside the ornament. I trace one ornament half with an extra fine permanent marker on 1/4 of the acetate. Then I draw and cut out a slightly smaller circle inside while checking to see if it will fit inside the ornament. Center the acetate on the napkin image. Trace around it and cut the circle out of the napkin. Remove the white layers of the napkin beneath the image. Next, I prepare and decoupage the image. Decoupaging can be a bit tricky, especially when you're using thin papers like napkins. To make it easier, I will share some helpful tips throughout the process. I trace the same ornament half around the snowman and cut the napkin inside the black line. I remove the 2 white layers from the snowman before decoupaging it on the acetate. Applying more than one layer of paper can cause wrinkles and gaps. Decoupage the image onto the acetate. I glue the image with gloss Mod Podge on the plastic. Matte and satin glues work as well. After applying and smoothing Mod Podge onto the plastic, I spray a little water on the napkin and center the image on the acetate. To avoid tearing the napkin, I tear off a piece of saran wrap, lay it over the image, and smooth it out with my fingers. Then I gently pull off the plastic and place it aside to dry for 30 minutes. Decorate and color the back of the ornament half. While the snowman is drying, I work on the back half of the ornament. I apply white snowflake stickers on the inside the ornament half. Then I spray and cover it with water so that I can sift colored self-adhesive flock inside. You can click on the upper right-hand corner to see how Luba and I color white flocking with tempera powder. Most of our colors are a mixture of yellow, blue, red, and black with white flock. To make darker colors, I mix 3 parts white flocking with 1 part tempera powder. To make pastel colors, I combine 7 parts white flocking with 1 part tempera powder. When purchasing tempera powder, I compare prices on Amazon with art stores such as deckblick.com and schoolspecialty.com to find the best deal. Michaels carries Deco Art tempera powders that can be found in the craft paint aisle too. Lightly spraying water on top of the flocking will seal it in place. There are 3 reasons why I prefer flocking over painting the back. Paint is difficult to clean up on the edges where the 2 ornament halves are combined. Also, it can seep under the stickers and requires 2 to 3 coats. On the other hand, colored flocking can be removed with a wet napkin even after it dries. Plus, it works well with stickers and it's easy to apply with just 1 coat. Both techniques may take several hours to dry. By the way, this ornament can be simplified by limiting the supplies to stickers and colored flocking. The simplified version makes fast and easy projects for decorating gatherings and ornament parties. Apply a second coat of Mod Podge on top of the snowman image. While the flock is drying, I paint another coat of Mod Podge on top of the snowman and then grab the front half of the ornament to make a frosty edge. Paint frost around the front half of the ornament. Frosty edges are easy to create by brushing on a glass bead medium. I like to use Liquitex glass bead medium and sprinkling diamond dust glitter over it. I buy my glitter at Hobby Lobby. And make sure to wipe the edge with a wet cloth to remove any residue. The residue will be hard to remove once it dries. Once I'm finished adding the beads and the glitter, I make sure to wipe the edge with a wet cloth to remove any residue on the edge. The residue will be hard to remove once it dries. This technique will take several hours to dry as well. Cut out a foam board backing and paint the back of the plastic on the snowman 2 times. While the ornament halves are drying, I cut out a piece of foam board backing. Then paint the back side of the snowman with a white acrylic paint twice so that the image stands out. I draw and cut the foam board so that it fits tight inside the ornament. It's best to see if it fits in an unfinished ornament half if the flocking is not fully dried. I like to use a professional hot knife or utility knife to cut the board, going over it 2 to 3 times on the front and once on the back to cut through that paper backing. While you can save money and skip the acetate and just glue the napkin on the foam core, be careful, this can cause the board to warp and wrinkle the napkin when drying. To soften the edge, stipple acrylic paint around it. I use a stencil brush to stipple white snow around the edges of the snowman. Stippling snow with a toothbrush is another option. Paint the side and back edge of the foam board to match the back of the ornament. While the 3 parts are drying, I paint the sides and edges of the back side of the foam core with an acrylic paint that matches the flocking. Brush glue on the foam board with Mod Podge and attach the snowman. After the paint has dried on the back of the snowman, I glue it on the foam backing with Mod Podge. Use Titebond multi-surface wood glue to glue the foam core into the back half of the ornament. Once the ornament halves have dried, I check and make sure they snap together. I glue the snowman inside the flopped ornament half with Titebond multi-surface wood glue, let it dry, and snap the 2 halves together. At this point, I can add a hanger and be done, or I can add embellishments to cover the edges. Make a clay border with paper clay and silicone molds. When adding the embellishments, I like to use fondant molds and paper clay. Paper clay can be hard to take out of the molds if you do not prep the molds first. I like to rush vegetable oil or cornstarch in my molds, and I find that vegetable oil helps prevent cracking and brings out the details more. When making the border, I brush the vegetable oil inside the mold and knead the clay well to make it more malleable. I press the clay well into the molds and move the sides around so I can pick up the details throughout. I use the plastic card, knife, and my finger to remove the excess clay on the back. I like to use my fingernail to polish the clay backing before removing the clay. When removing the clay from the mold, it is often easier to flip the mold over and carefully remove the clay from the edges of the mold. It will take 2 borders to cover the edges of the ornament. Glue 2 borders around the joined edges with Titebond multi-surface wood glue. I apply the borders by brushing Titebond multi-surface glue on the back of the clay and joined edges on the ornament. Sometimes Mod Podge can be used to glue on clay borders if they are not too heavy. Applying the borders with Mod Podge to a smooth plastic surface requires patience and working slowly. Once the borders are added, I can use water and clay to repair any flaws and joints in the clay. I let the ornament dry for at least 30 minutes before painting the clay border. Paint the border with an acrylic wash, which is a watered down acrylic paint. The clay can be painted wet or dry. I prefer to paint the border before it is completely dry so that the clay dries more evenly and is less likely to crack. Cracks can be filled in with Mod Podge and paint. Before adding paint, I like to water down navy blue acrylic paint and wash it over the edges so it reveals the detail in the clay. If you want the ornament to look more worn and antique, a dark brown or black wash can be used instead. Mold, attach, and paint 2 holly leaf embellishments. Lastly, I create 2 holly leaves and berries using a mold and paper clay, glue them in the middle on each side with Titebond, and paint them like the border. Paint the border and embellishments with gold and silver acrylic paint. After the blue dries, I slightly mix silver and gold acrylic paint and paint the border, allowing the blue crevices to show through. Strawberry red paint on the berries gives the embellishments a pop of color. And here is the finished ornament. If you have any questions or new techniques you are willing to share, please leave a comment below. We work hard to create videos that we hope you like. If you did like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing. Thank you.